what we do is we take an ordinary pencil, and in order to identify the aperture position, what we do is we take the pencil and we place it between our teeth, and we try to angle the pencil in such a way that it's about in direct proportion to where your nose is. If you can look at the pencil and just keep it in terms of where your nose is and blow air into that position, it looks something like this. There we go. Okay? Now, what that does is it keeps your teeth aperture open about 1/4 of an inch or the size of a pencil. Also, this is a very important and extremely, it's such an important point that I can't even find the word for it. It's a very, very serious point here. To keep the pencil at that angle, because what that does is it brings the jaw slightly forward, which is the position that will create and set up our buffer situation for the bottom lip, which I will explain a little later. Right now, try to understand that we're bringing the jaw slightly forward, and we're using a pencil to identify how far forward we should come. Now, for each individual, some people have thicker lips, some people have thinner lips, so the motion of the jaw forward, coming forward, might be less than others. So what we try to do is we try to keep it to about slightly forward, a little beyond, or slightly forward, or even parallel in some situations, depending on the thickness of the person's lips. So in some situations, you might be parallel or slightly forward. Keeping that point in mind, try to remember that this is for the purpose of identifying where the jaw should remain while you're playing the trumpet. So I'll demonstrate it one more time, and try to imagine the skeleton and see if you could imagine where my teeth are in relationship to the pencil, okay? And I will do it incorrectly also. First, I'll do it correctly. Okay? Now notice that while I was doing that, the pencil remains in its position. Now, incorrect would be if the pencil starts to move around. I'll explain that. I'll do it first and I'll explain. What's happening is that causes what we call a floating jaw. In the process of that floating jaw doing what it's doing, it creates inside the mouth, again, the masseter muscle pulling back and forth, the radial muscles causing sneering, and the fact that the corners are now irrelevant because we can't recover from this position moving around. So by setting up the pencil and keeping it parallel to the nose, we create a position that causes you to be keenly aware of where your corners are, where the top lip, how it drapes, and keeping your bottom buffer up, as we said before in the isometric principle. So keeping that in mind, those are the basic exercises that we do without the trumpet. Now, let's try to understand again. I'd like to review that for a second. Let's try to keep in mind that one of the main and most important factors here is that what we're trying to do here is identify the correct playing muscles of the face, so that we can now begin to concentrate on which are the muscles that I need to develop, so that when you do a long tone, you're using the correct muscles in the face and the correct structure, so that if you were doing a long tone, whatever development you are supposed to obtain from this long tone, you will get. Whereas if you have a floating jaw, let's say for a G, and then when you play an A, you move it down for something else, so for whatever reason you're moving your jaw around, then what begins to happen is that instead of development, you start getting all these motions, and you'll practice long tones forever and nothing really happens. Or if you set up your position with loose or flabby lips, and trying to get low notes with loose or flabby lips, as we call them, again, you can practice for months, years, and decades, and nothing happens. You develop because muscles develop anyway, whether they develop incorrectly or correctly. So what we're saying here is that by identifying the correct muscles, we are condensing the amount of time that it takes to develop to be a powerful, strong, energetic trumpet player, etc.